celebrate their 125th anniversary of their existence and the establishment of the church in Colorado Springs. Spoke on Saturday and Sunday, and was reminded of Brooks Nelson. Went to school with some of you. He and Don Mahi played an important role for as here at Graceland, and then they coached at Lamoni High School for several years before Brooks went out west. Anyway, he brought greetings to the saints here. As a reminder, we meet together as priesthood to encourage, to instruct, and to enlighten. It's that monthly rah-rah-ree, like a coach getting together with the players and giving them instruction and foresight as to what to expect and encourage them to carry it out. I happened to be born and raised in Hawaii. I was born, enjoy your tie. I see you found the ties that I left on Friday. I left 52 ties there, except that I took the Harley Davidson and the Marine Corps and the Graceland football ties back. Anyway, I was very fortunate in that I was raised in Waioa, Hawaii, and I was raised to goodly parents. My dad belonged to the LDS church, and my mom belonged to the RLDS church. And so growing up, there was always debate as to which church was right. My mom had grown up Catholic and was baptized in her teen years, and so she still had that Catholic influence, like Paul. Anyway, growing up in Hawaii, it was really neat because the missionaries always came to assist in this debate with the Mormon elders. And so early on, you got a good scriptural background of not only the church, but of the Lord Jesus Christ. And all along, I had Christ in my life. I remember teaching Sunday school when I was senior high, teaching the Book of Mormon. Of course, it was very easy because they had that quarterly that you would study and you would read the scriptures and share, and that was easy. However, I struggled because I thought I was preparing myself for service, and my brother Kawila, or Mel, was called to priesthood when he was 14, and I was the one that was teaching Sunday school. I was the one that was head of our little Zion's League, and doing all these things which I thought was right. And I was spoken to under the influence of the Spirit to tell them, and was instructed to be faithful, because there would be a time that I would be the religious leader of my family, and they would look to me for spiritual strength. And then Brother Clayton was called, and I was thinking, what's up? Either somebody's not listening to God, or... And then I'm sorry. Last week they gave me a microphone and I walked up and down the aisles, and so sitting down.
It's hard.
Anyway, then there was the high school, and I was a pretty good athlete. In fact, my senior year I was voted the best athlete of the senior class, and yet several days later I break my collarbone. I had caught a pass, and we were playing Waipahu High School, and they were leading in the conference. Caught a pass, and all I saw was that red flag, and as I ran, I switched hands to keep the ball closest to the sideline, away from the tackler like you're supposed to do, and the ball slipped out. I jumped on the ball, and as I jumped on the ball, I hit the ground with the elbow and broke the clavicle.
Ouch.
And that was pretty hard on me because I thought, again, I was doing the right things, and all of a sudden there was this disruption in my life. And yet, all along, there was this guidance. My heroes at that time, were athletes like John Arnett, who played for USC and went on to play professional football, and Mickey Mantle, number 7 for the New York Yankees, and those were my idols athletically, because I had this image of athletics, and so it was a struggle for me that senior year. In fact, I almost didn't graduate because I was supposed to give a book report. It was English. It was a literature course, and I was supposed to give a book report, and I could not speak in front of a group. I refused to speak in front of that group, and it was, just my friends, people who I'd grown up with, and I remember the girls in the class said, "Dewey, just do it. You've already read the book. Just do it." And I couldn't stand up in front of my friends and share. And the English teacher, who was from the mainland, said, "If you don't, you get an F. And if you get an F, you're not going to graduate." And I said, "Well, if you have to give me an F, give me an F." And so I laughed when I looked at the transcripts, and I graduated 274, I think, out of 276 seniors. And and so I was going to the University of Hawaii because they weren't part of the NC2A yet. They were still trying to get certification from some institute of higher education, so that, and because of that, you didn't have to, take the ACT test or be in the top 50% of your class, etc., to get accepted. You could just go. But my grandmother, who came to World Conference in 1956 and then came to Lamoni to visit Mom and Pop Shipman, came back and said, "Dewey, you're going to Graceland." And I said, no, I don't want to go to Graceland. Don't want to leave the islands. And yet, the only time I've been back to the islands has been to share at funerals or weddings or vacation or go and recruit students to come to Graceland. And then when I came to Graceland, it was very difficult for me, not academically. That part wasn't difficult because when I was in the 10th grade, you had to take this algebra test. And I had scored in the top 94% of the nation. And I remember Miss O'Connor coming to me and saying, Dewey, how come you don't do your homework? And I said, why do I have to do the homework if I look at the problem and have the answer in my head? Why do I need to do homework? Anyway, it was difficult because everyone knew that I could do the work, however, my interests were elsewhere. And yet, all along, you could see the Lord guiding me in ways that I wasn't aware of at that time. One of my best friends at Graceland was Roger Hubbard. Everybody knows Gene, but Roger was killed. He and I were going to join the 104th Airborne together, and somehow some little girl, I said something about the Marines, and some little girl said, if you join the Marines, I won't have anything to do with you. And so guess what? I joined the United States Marine Corps. But because I joined the Marine Corps, my brother Clayton sent me a picture of this girl at Graceland. And I looked at that picture and he said, Dewey, you need to date this girl because she is going to set you straight. And I said, no way is some little girl going to set me straight. I know what I want, I know what I can do, and no little girl's going to help me. Well, I put that little girl's picture in the grommet of my cover. I know other people say hat. The United States Marines say cover. And so every day, every morning, every time I took off my cover, I looked at this girl and I fell in love with her before I ever met her. And when I came after boot camp and advanced infantry training to Graceland, I saw this girl and I just stared at her and I couldn't believe how beautiful she was. And which was Shirley. And sure enough, she has been very helpful in keeping me on the straight and narrow. Even this morning, she said, where are you going? And I said, to Sunday school. Remember I told you I was doing this thing in Colorado Springs last week, and then this week we're going to do this church. And she says, but we need to pack. For all of those that don't know, we're leaving Lamoni on Saturday. We're flying out to, and that's why I went and gave you all my ties. Anyway.
What do you mean leaving for good?
No. We purchased a place out there. We're moving in, but we're coming back to take care of the home and put it up for sale. And I know people think it's a little backwards, but sure, when we were in Colorado, and we spent, let's see, something I attended SPEC for almost 30 years. And one day when we came to SPEC, Shirley said, I hear there's a house that was advertised for sale. When she came and she said, you can't believe that spirit in that home. And I said, well, why are you looking at that house? We live in Colorado Springs. And pretty soon you'd know it. We packed up we packed up whatever things we owned, put it in the truck, and I drove to Lamoni, dropped off the things, dropped off the truck in Independence, caught a plane to St. Louis, and was picked up by John Billings, who had invited me to a retreat that weekend. Did the retreat, came back to Lamoni, went back to Colorado Springs, and within a couple of months, Shirley was living in Lamoni and then pursued her education here, and shortly thereafter, I was fortunate to get a job with Bonita, and we were able to still continue to travel, but and it was really kind of neat because the house does have a special spirit, and we'll get back to the house later, but I wanted to talk about the influence of Roger Hubbard. Roger was a young man from Cameron, Missouri, who was a young priest, and he influenced me quite a bit while we were at Graceland. The only thing was that when I was headed for Vietnam, I got noticed through the church's newsletter to servicemen that Roger had been killed. He was on a search and destroy mission. There was one shot that was fired, and he was killed. And it devastated me. And I wondered, I argued with the Lord on why he would take such an outstanding young man. And yet, several years later, while under church appointment, I was speaking in Enid, Oklahoma. And as I was speaking, there was a young lady that seemed to be crying. And so I thought, wow, this lady is filled with the Spirit. So I cranked it up, and she even cried even more. And so at the end of the service, I met her, and she hugged me, and she said, so you're Dewey? And I said, yes. She says, I've known you for a long, long time because of my brother Roger. And brother Roger was your best friend in college. And then she told me how he had sent her, the family, a book, and it was about a paratrooper and how that paratrooper had been killed in war. And she said that Roger was preparing the family for his death. However, what was really neat was that after praying and fasting quite a bit in their grief, Father had a vision, and in that vision he saw the celestial realm, and he saw Roger laying his hands upon someone's head to receive a blessing. And that was very gratifying for the family as well for me to know that there was a continuation of his ministry from here to the hereafter. Several years later, while doing a admission session, I met this young lady. She wanted to introduce me to her mom, and so she made another campus visit, and she said, "I understand you went to Vietnam." And I said, "Yes, I did." She says, "Well, my best friend got killed in Vietnam." And as we spoke, Roger's name came up, and she started to cry because she was supposed to get married to Roger the month after he got back, or November. His tour was ending in October. He died in September, and she tried to share her experience with Roger. And I didn't really deal with his death until I got an etching from the wall and was able to just cry my heart out. But again, the Lord blessed me in that way. And to go back just a little bit, after I graduated, I was a city night police officer my junior and senior year at Graceland while still playing football, and went on to take a job in Salem, Oregon. And the very first Sunday,
Keep talking.
It's not working.
No, we have to get it back. Keep talking.
the very first Sunday, upon arrival in Oregon, this young man comes up to me and says, "Dewey, we'd like for you to be the youth leader." And I said, "Gosh, I haven't even made it to the church doors yet."
We can hear you, Dewey.
We can hear you, Dewey. Go ahead.
And it was Dale Luffman, who was at that time a priest at the congregation, and he was trying to help the pastorate look for a youth leader. And so I said, "Yeah, I'll help to do whatever I can." And so later on, Dale and I did a lot of things together. In fact, we recall chipping arrowheads and making birch bark canoes with our good buddy out here on the land, and we were preparing to take our ministry to the Native Americans. However, after a couple of years, Dale and I decided that our ministry was in the congregation and not traveling to try to restore a belief system with Native Americans. In fact, Shirley would ask me, "Why are you folks going to the reservations trying to teach them to chip arrowheads from obsidian?" And I said, "Well, actually what we're trying to do is hone up on some of their skills so that we can come and talk to them on their level rather than saying, 'Here's the Book of Mormon, it'll save you.'" And So I went back into the congregation and served there as youth leader, and we were going to this little church in Woodburn, and Dale decided to go up to Portland Metropole to give his ministry, and I decided that I would go to Salem, which is about 13 miles away. And at that time, I was a motorcycle cop. I wore high boots and tight pants before Eric Estrada. And so one day I drove up, my partner and I saw activities at the church. And so we rode up to the church, parked the bikes, and the person in charge of the activities didn't know who I was. So she came running out of the church and she says, everything's all right. We're just having an activity. I hope the girls, the young people didn't do anything wrong. I said, no, I'm just a church member that's stopping by, checking out the church because I'm going to transfer my membership. And so it was really neat later on, and there were days when we would be in the office and they had moved to Lamoni, and she came to me and she said, Dewey, do you remember the first day I met you and you were riding that big old motorcycle? And I thought, and I said, yes, I often remember that because that was a significant experience and helped me to reinforce my need to attend the church there. Had many experiences as a police officer that kept guiding me. You know, I was fortunate in that I made sergeant in 3 years, and it took the average patrolman 8 years just to get on the sergeant's list. And one of the things that helped was you knew how to take tests, and you knew how to, because of your college education, and I didn't take any criminal justice classes, and I made sergeant in 3 years, and then after that I took the lieutenant's exam and was second on the list and was about to make lieutenant when I went to a reunion, and Ray Huggett was a guest minister there, and he talked to me and he says, I think you should come work for me as my administrative assistant and youth leader in Denver State. And I thought, oh my gosh, an opportunity to serve the church. I went back from that reunion, told Shirley, I got a job offer. We're going to move. And she said, why would you move making almost nothing when you have a very successful career as a police officer? And I did. I was very fortunate in that several years earlier we were called to a silent alarm, and I just briefed the officers. We just got we had a briefing. You know, we get together, we talk about the events, things to anticipate on the road, things that happened, and what they could expect for the graveyard shift. And my partner and I, in fact, I just called him, told him that I was returning to Oregon, and he about cried. He said, Dewey, you don't know what I went through when you left. it was like losing your brother. It was because you meant so much to me and the Salem Police Department. I was one of those fortunate people that got to marry several police officers, and in fact, a lot of times the crooks, or those people who had committed crimes, would want to come in and they'd say, we have I understand you have a priest that is also a cop, and I'd like to talk to him. And we'd go into this room, you know, with a one-way you can see while people are being interviewed, and the detectives would come and say, Dewey, don't you know that that guy was wanted for all these crimes? And I would say, I'm sorry, but you have to talk to him because I have to reserve the priest privileges. Yes, I did. And so, but there was an incident when we were responding to a silent alarm when we had just gotten from briefing. My partner and I were talking about where we were going to eat later that evening, and so this alarm comes, and then all of a sudden you're traveling at 60 miles an hour in the city with lights and sirens. And when they said 266, you're in charge, I said a little prayer because I knew that the incident, the Spirit helped me to realize that this incident was really serious, even though a motorcycle cop returning late at night said they had a silent alarm last night, and it was the employees that had tripped the alarm. I thanked them, and we got there. I set up a quadrant with officers on both sides of the building to provide security on the outside, and we waited to go in. You know, you cut off your overhead lights a couple of blocks away because the people in the building can see the overhead lights. You use your emergency brakes to stop the vehicle, because if you use your brakes, what? Brake lights come on and the crooks know you're out there. So we're waiting, get out of the car, and we're waiting. Dispatcher advises me that the owner of the building, which was an outdoor store with a lot of guns and ammo, was he lived a half hour away and would take some time to get there to open it up, but an employee lived 2 blocks away, and guess what? The employee comes rushing up, squeals into the parking lot, steps on his brakes, lights flashing, and says, oh my gosh, the crooks know we're here. Anyway, we entered the building. He led us into the building, and he said, oh, you don't have to do that, because we were taught and trained to hold the flashlight out here with your weapon drawn here. Nowadays they do this, right? TV? Yeah. With a flashlight this way and the gun here so that you could see and you could shoot with while the light is flashing on a person. No, the crooks shoot at the light. They'll shoot you. And I had to tell the FBI, you guys are dummies, man. I said, we train our officers to hold the lights out here and to walk this way. This way, when you turn, the radius, if you're holding the gun out here too, the radius is longer, and so it takes a little microsecond before longer because the arc is longer. And you learn that in geometry. Anyway, so we taught the FBI a lot. In fact, they sent officers from the CIA and the FBI to interview this guy because they wanted somebody with a black belt in karate and had this knowledge of street knowledge that could affect them, to teach them at their academy. Anyway, so I told my partner to take that aisle because the aisle was filled, that side had the rifles, and this aisle down here had all the handguns, and to check to make sure that things weren't out of order. And we get back to the back of the building, and the employee says, "Let me turn the lights on and hit the main switch. You won't have to use the flashlight." And he goes and he flips the switch and the lights do not come on. And he said, he was swearing, and I had turned my radio down so that I could speak outside, but if the outside officers were speaking, my radio wouldn't go off. And so I stepped to the stairwell because I thought I heard somebody on the roof. I had advised the officers on the outside that somebody was on the roof. I cracked the door to the office there, and I saw a person prying on the safe, and then he had a 380 Beretta on his side. He was talking to someone, and so I kicked the door in, and I said, "Freeze, or I'll add an orifice to your body." My partner said later, "What the hell is it?" I says, "Oh, I forgot." Anyway, that guy was so startled. He looked at me like, "Who's this crazy guy?" And so I said, "Drop the bar, the crowbar, or else I was going to shoot and call your partner out." And so he came out, and we put them in the felony prone position. I took the weapon, put it in my pocket, and when I went to take the weapon out, it got caught on the seam of my pocket, the hammer, and then the hammer had been cocked. Later on, investigations, when we examined the weapon, they had filed off the sear, so when they pressed or pulled the trigger, it would have shot 8 rounds, like a machine gun. Their intent was to kill a cop that night. And so I called the outside officers to take these people to jail and charge them with burglary 1. And I told my partner I was going to go and pray. And he said, Ron says, "Dewey, you say a prayer for me because you're the luckiest officer on this planet." And 2 weeks earlier, 2 officers in California had been shot because they ran into almost the same situation. And as I was praying, and I asked the Lord, "Why would you save me when others have gone through the same experience and they were killed?" And an audible voice said, "Because you have a work to do and it has not been accomplished." Talk about going straight. Oh my gosh. In the lieutenant's log, he wrote how 2 very well-trained officers were able to place 2 armed men taken into custody without incident. And that was a little short blurb. And I laughed, and I thought, man, you don't even know what really happened, Lieutenant. But a couple of months later, Lieutenant calls me on graveyard, and he says, the captain wants to see you at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we got off at 6. And he said, so after you go through your reports and brush up your shoes, tidy up, and what did you do for the captain to want to talk to you? And I said, I don't know. So we have this interview with the captain, and the captain says, Dewey, we want to take you from the street, and we know that when you were on the motorcycles, you led the whole department and the number of citations written, and your squad has been the best producer for arrests, etc. But you're the only person with a 4-year degree, and we'd like for you to be in charge of 8 officers that we're putting in the schools. And it was called the School Liaison Program. And I smiled and I said, yes, I'll take the job. He said, no, we want you to go home and we want you to ask Shirley if it was all right for you to take the job. And I said, no, it's all right, I'll take the job. And he said, no, you go. He said, Dewey, you don't understand. You've been working shift work all this time. Now you're going to be working the days, and you're going to be home regular hours, and you're going to impose yourself on the family. Now you're going to have regular family hours, etc. And it's going to be different for Shirley and for the kids because you're going to be home with them. And I said, I've been praying about this for a long time, and I'll take the job. And he said, no, you go home, talk to Shirley, and then you come back and tell me. And so I have eventually got the job as the head of the School Liaison Program. And my very first day on the job, there's a armed robbery, and I had traded my 6-inch weapon. I carried a 6-inch pistol because I was also heading up the SWAT team because I had gone to FBI SWAT school. And there were terrorist groups in Oregon. Way back in the 70s, there was the training grounds in Oregon, Eastern Oregon, and so the FBI came and they set up SWAT teams. And so I gave up my 6-incher and I took the rifle out of the trunk, turned it in, etc., which we did every day, but I carried a rifle with me all the time. And so I have a 4-incher so that it doesn't hang up on your desk, or I mean your chair while you're sitting at a desk. And so it's 3:30 in the afternoon. The alarm goes off regarding an armed robbery at one of the banks, and a code 4 goes out, which means no matter what you're doing, all the officers are to drop what they're doing and to respond. And so here I grabbed keys for an unmarked car. I walked past the lieutenant. He asked me where I was going, and I said I was heading out south. So I headed. He said, I'll go with you. Shirley had said, Dewey, since this is going to be your first day with regular hours, you'll be home at 5:30. At 6 o'clock, we'll have this nice dinner. I'm going to make a roast, and we'll have potatoes and carrots and really have a nice dinner. And so I went south, and the lieutenant asked me, "Why are you going south on Commercial Street?" I said, "I'm going to the freeway and then I'm going to work my way back." And he said, "Oh, good idea." So I'm working my way back. We get a report regarding a partial, somebody had seen a vehicle matching the description with partial plate. And so I moved back, discover the car, and guess what? Dewey makes the mistake of eventually arresting that person, taking that person into custody. So I had to take the weapon off of him, so I had to book it into evidence. And to maintain the chain of evidence, I had to write umpteen reports about how I captured that person, and this evidence is in this locker, etc. And then dinner time comes around. Shirley calls me, and she said, "Dewey, where are you?" And I said, "You're not going to believe this. I just captured an armed robber, and I have to stay here to write reports." And Shirley said, "But you promised. Why didn't you let some other person arrest them?" Anyway, it was another blessing in disguise, because when Ray Huggett asked me to go to work for Denver State, I took the job because of the internal things that were happening to me at that time. I was having a breathing problem, and I couldn't sleep. And the doctor said that I was suffering from Moses syndrome. And then when he heard I was also the pastor of the congregation, he said, "No, you're suffering from that Jesus syndrome. You think you have to save all of the people." And so when your body tries to relax, it can't, because it's thinking about all the things that you haven't done to save the people in your congregation and save the people in the community. And it was almost the same thing when we were in admissions, and my son Keala said, "Dad, I got some friends. It's graduation, and they need a ride to the airport. All their friends have left." And so I said, "But I have meetings at 10 o'clock. Bonita wants to meet at 10 o'clock. So he says, "Well, let's do this. Let's go down early." And I said, "Okay." Takes me an hour and 45 minutes to get down there. We drop them off on the curb, and then we just get back. I'll be able to go to the meetings. So 6 o'clock, so 5:45 we get there, and guess what? These international students haven't packed yet. And I was like, "Oh no." So we're packing. I'm trying to get them to pack it. And those Oriental boys were very neat. Everything folded. And I said, "No, we don't have time to fold everything. Just dump it in your suitcases. We have to go." I had, on that weekend, I had gone to, previously to Colorado to do a wedding. And so I said, well, we dropped the boys off. On the way back, thought, we'll go to the bank at Blythedale. Keala, in the meantime, he's fallen asleep because of the early hours, and he's in the car. We pull up to the Blythedale bank, and I looked in the bank and I thought, man, this is really neat. It's May, and there's somebody with a mask in the bank. And I thought, man, this bank is really celebrating well. having been a police officer for some time, I walk into the bank and I see the teller crying and the loan officer, Jim White, he looks down and looks up at me, and all of a sudden this guy pops up with a weapon and said, "Get out of here, I'll blow you away." So I thought, oh my gosh, back to the good old days. So I put my hand up so that he saw that I didn't have a weapon, and this guy was saying, "Get out of here," like this. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's going to shoot the lights in the ceiling. I'm going to get cut by glass. And so as I walked out backwards this way, hit the bar to let him go. He went that way, and I headed this way. And Mr. White said, "Dewey, come back in the bank. Please come back in the bank." I said, "No, we're the only person that can identify him as he got into the car." Even they didn't see the car. So he jumped in the car. I jumped in that. We had bought the church vehicle, when we left appointment. Didn't know that they had a governor on that thing. It wouldn't go faster than 85 miles an hour. And so here we were going down westbound out of Blythedale at a high rate of speed, and so finally saw that the person was turning down 69, came back to the bank, and the bank person said, "No, we're having an emergency." And I said to her that I was part of that emergency, and so we got online with the sheriff's department, and the lady said, "Get off the line, we're having it." Then they say, "Would you please go back to the bank to give your report, or wait for the FBI and the state troopers?" And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late for meetings. So I called the college, says I'm going to be late, and